I'm the one who built the curriculum. Every lesson plan, every assessment rubric, every student's outcome metric our district used to secure a federal grant. But when the school board meeting came, my principal walked in with my binder and introduced it as his vision. He didn't even know what was in the appendix, so I sat in the back row and let him present it. What he didn't know was that I'd made one small change the night before. The fall semester always smelled like dry erase markers and optimism. That particular September, I had been awake until nearly 2 in the morning, 3 nights in a row, fine-tuning the last section of what I'd spent 14 months building. A K-8 literacy intervention framework for our district. Not a template I downloaded, not a committee project. Mine. I had read the research, built the data models, piloted 3 versions with real students, revised and revised again. I was 29 years old, and I taught 5th grade at Hartwell Elementary in Columbus, Ohio. And I was good at it, not in the way people say to be polite, but in the way that showed up in numbers. My students consistently outperformed the district average on state assessments. The year before, our class had the highest reading growth gains in the county. None of that made me feel untouchable. If anything, it made me careful. My principal's name was Mr. Gallagher. He had been at Hartwell for 11 years, always well-dressed, always composed, always walking the hallways with the kind of confidence that came from never being questioned. He was good at relationships, with parents, with the superintendent, with whoever was in the room that mattered most. He was not particularly good at curriculum. He knew it. I think he knew I knew it. In March, he had called me into his office and asked me to lead a district initiative on literacy. The federal grant window was opening. The district needed a cohesive intervention model. He said, and I remember this exactly, "You're the one who actually understands this stuff. I want you to drive it." I said yes. I always said yes to things that mattered. I spent the next several months building something I was genuinely proud of. It had 5 tiers. It accounted for ELL students, students with IEPs, and students performing above grade level. I had included teacher training protocols, a progress monitoring schedule, and an evaluation rubric tied to ESAS accountability measures. I presented a draft to him in May. He nodded a lot, asked me to simplify the language on a few slides, told me the board would love it. In August, 2 weeks before the school year started, I submitted the finalized version. 143 pages. My name was on the cover. Developed by Iris Calloway, 5th grade literacy specialist. The email he forwarded to the district office did not include the attachment I sent. It included a version that had been reformatted, clean, professional, polished. The cover read, Hartwell District Literacy Initiative, proposed by Principal James Gallagher in collaboration with staff. I discovered this by accident. Our district coordinator emailed me to say how much she admired the framework and mentioned that she'd received it from Mr. Gallagher that morning. She said, "He must be so proud of what his team put together." I stared at my phone for a long time after reading that. I didn't reply right away. I set the phone face down on my kitchen table and finished my coffee. Then I went back to my laptop and opened the submission he had sent. I scrolled to the cover. Then I scrolled to the cover document. My name appeared once in a footnote listed alongside every other teacher at Hartwell, as if I had contributed a sticky note at a professional development session. I didn't cry. I was past the part where things like that made me cry. Instead, I opened a new folder on my personal drive and named it quietly. I started moving files in. The board presentation was scheduled for the second Tuesday in October. Mr. Gallagher mentioned it to me once in passing. Early September, in the hallway before first bell, the board meeting's coming up, he said, tying it to nothing. Should be a good evening for the district. He did not ask me to come. He did not ask me to prepare remarks. He did not mention my name. I kept doing my job. I kept teaching. I kept attending the curriculum committee meetings where my framework was now being discussed as his initiative. I listened to people praise the structure of it, the tiering, the progress monitoring design. A literacy coach from the west side of the district said, "Whoever put this together really understood the research." I looked at the table. There was a Tuesday afternoon in late September when our assistant principal stopped by my room after the students had gone. She sat in one of the little chairs, the kind size for fifth graders, and looked uncomfortable in it. Her name was Miss Pruitt. She was newer than me, but she was careful, and I trusted her instincts. "I just want to check in," she said. "How are you feeling about everything?" I kept arranging the bookshelves because it gave me something to do with my hands. "Fine," I said. She paused. "Because it's your work that's being presented. And I've been in those meetings. I've seen the drafts with your name on them." I turned around. "I know. He's not going to change it," she said quietly. "I just want you to know I see it." I nodded. I wasn't angry at her. She was telling me something true, and there was nothing comfortable about it. We both understood the math of the situation. He had tenure, relationships, and the title. I had the work, and the first name that didn't fit the narrative he was selling. After she left, I sat at my desk for a long time. The room was quiet except for the hum of the heating system. I opened my laptop and pulled up the master file. I read through the appendix, all the teacher-facing resources I'd built, the student data tracker, the diagnostic proto I had spent a full weekend designing. I read it slowly, like a person taking inventory of what they own. Then I made one small revision. It was subtle. A teacher in the room would have had to know what they were looking at. But anyone who asked the right question during a presentation, anyone who actually understood the framework, would have found it immediately. I saved the file. I sent it to Mr. Gallagher with a note, updated version with minor clarifications, ready for the board. He responded within 20 minutes. "Perfect. Thank you. We're all set." He had not opened it. I could tell by how fast the reply came. The October board meeting was held at the district's central office, a converted building on Henderson Road with fluorescent lights that buzzed faintly and chairs arranged in rows like a town hall. I went. He hadn't invited me, but the meeting was public and the agenda was posted online. I wore my good blazer. I sat in the fourth row. Mr. Gallagher walked in with 2 printed copies of the framework, a clicker for the slides and the particular kind of energy that comes from someone who has rehearsed, being impressive. He greeted board members by name. He set a branded folder at each seat. The folders had the district logo. Inside was the framework, my framework, his name on the cover. When he stood up to present, I folded my hands in my lap. He opened well. The overview was strong, mostly because I had written it to be accessible. He moved through the first 3 tiers without issue. He talked about research-based interventions and multi-tiered support systems the way someone talks about a city they visited once, enough to describe it, but not enough to give directions. Then a board member named Mr. Adeyemi leaned forward. He had the kind of stillness that meant he actually read the materials in front of him. "On page 47, he said, there's a diagnostic sequence in Tier 2. Can you walk me through the decision logic? Specifically how teachers are supposed to determine the difference between a decoding deficit and a fluency processing gap?" The room was quiet. Mr. Gallagher smiled. "Great question. The framework really gets into the weeds on that, and our literacy specialists are best positioned to explain the implementation details." "You're the one presenting it," Mr. Adeyemi said. Not unkindly, just factually. Mr. Gallagher glanced at his notes. He described decoding in general terms. He used the words scaffolding and differentiation the way people use filler words, not because they're wrong, but because they aren't saying anything. Mr. Adeyemi kept his eyes on page 47 and said nothing. Another board member who had been nodding slowed down her nodding. The presentation didn't collapse, it just softened, like dough that didn't quite rise. Afterward, during the reception, I stood near the coffee station. The district's curriculum director found me. She was someone I had sent early drafts to for feedback months ago. "I didn't realize you'd be here," she said. "I wanted to see it presented," I said. She looked at me for a moment. You wrote this, didn't you? I mean, really wrote it. 14 months, I said. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Mr. Adingi is going to follow up. He does that. He'll want more detail on the tier 2 sequence. I know, I said. That's why I wrote it the way I did. She looked at me again, differently this time. Then she nodded slowly and walked toward the exit. I drove home that night with the radio off. The city moved past my windows, headlights and stoplights, the particular quiet of a Tuesday night when everyone is home but no one is sleeping yet. My sister called while I was still in the car. She's 4 years older than me and works in healthcare administration in Pittsburgh. She has a talent for cutting straight to the thing you're trying not to say. How was it? She asked. He presented my work, I said, and he couldn't answer a question about it. What are you going to do? I turned onto my street. I already did it. She didn't ask what I meant right away. She knows me well enough to wait. I changed something in the document before I send the final version, I said. A small thing, in the Tier 2 section. It's technically sound, but it leads you to a dead end if you don't understand the underlying logic. Anyone who actually built it would know how to navigate around it. Anyone who just read the surface wouldn't. She was quiet for a second. So when someone asks a detailed question, it surfaces immediately, I said. And did someone ask? Tonight, yes. Another pause. Then she said, Iris, I didn't sabotage anything, I said. I just stopped hiding the gaps. The follow-up came 11 days later. Mr. Adeyemi had submitted questions in writing to the superintendent's office. He wanted a detailed technical walkthrough of the Tier 2 diagnostic sequence. He referenced the specific page numbers. He had clearly reread the framework after the meeting. Mr. Gallagher sent me an email that Thursday morning. He asked if I could put together a brief explainer document for the board's questions. He framed it as a routine task. He said a quick turnaround would be great. I read the email twice. Then I walked down to his office and knocked on the open door. He looked up from his computer. Hey, did you get my email? I did, I said. I sat down without being asked, which I had never done before. I think we need to talk about how this presentation was framed. He put on his careful face. The presentation went well, I thought. The board is engaged. My name isn't on the framework, I said. It's a district initiative, he said, as if that answered something. I developed it, I said. I have 14 months of drafts, meeting notes, research logs and correspondence that document that. I have the original file with my name on the cover, time-stamped. I have emails from the curriculum director where I'm the one explaining the model to her in detail, months before you sent it. He was still. The careful face became something else, something quieter. I'm not asking to be aggressive, I said. I'm asking to be accurate. My name needs to be on this work, not in a footnote. As the developer, if the board asks for a walkthrough, I'm the one who gives it. That's not negotiable. He looked at the surface of his desk for a moment. Then he said, I hear you. Those words meant nothing, but the silence underneath them meant something. I'll be sending a follow-up email to the curriculum director this afternoon, I said. I'll be attaching the original timestamp draft with my name on it. I'm documenting this conversation in writing as well. I stood up, thanked him for his time as if it had been an ordinary meeting, and walked back to my classroom. My hands were shaking slightly when I got back to my room, not from fear. From the particular adrenaline of saying a true thing out loud to someone who did not want to hear it. I sat at my desk and typed the email to the curriculum director. I kept it factual and without heat. I introduced myself as the developer of the framework, attached the original version with my name and timestamps, and mentioned that I was available to present the Tier 2 walkthrough to the board directly. I sent it. Then I emailed my union representative. Her name was Claudette, and she had been a 4th grade teacher for 19 years before moving into advocacy. She called me back within the hour. Do you want to file a formal grievance? She asked. Not yet, I said. I want documentation first. A paper trail wide enough to live in. Smart, she said. Keep everything. Written correspondence only from here. No hallway conversations without following up in email. Already doing that. She was quiet for a moment. You know this doesn't always end cleanly. I know, I said, but it needs to be on record, whatever happens. What happened next moved faster than I expected. The curriculum director responded to my email within 2 hours. She asked if I would be available to meet with her and the assistant superintendent the following week. The email was professional and careful, but something in its tone had shifted. She was paying attention now in a different way. 2 days after that, a 5th grade teacher from a school on the north side of the district reached out to me through the district's internal messaging system. She said she had been assigned to the Literacy Initiative implementation team and had read the framework closely. She said, I've been trying to figure out who actually built this because the thinking in it doesn't match anything I've seen from district leadership before. I wanted to reach out directly. I thanked her. I asked if you'd be willing to put that in writing. She said yes. These things accumulate. Not dramatically, just steadily, the way water collects before it moves. The meeting with the curriculum director and the assistant superintendent was on a Thursday in a conference room on the 2nd floor of the district office. I brought Claudette with me. Mr. Gallagher was not in the room, which told me something had already shifted. I had a folder with me, printed correspondence, file metadata, the original draft with my name, a timeline I had assembled showing every phase of development. I didn't open it dramatically. I just set it on the table and folded my hands over it. The assistant superintendent, a woman named Dr. Myra Ako, who had been in education for 30 years, looked at the folder and then looked at me. We appreciate you coming in, she said. We've had a chance to review the documentation you sent. I want to make sure the record reflects who developed this framework, I said. Not as a conflict, but as a matter of accuracy. The district's grant application will be reviewed federally. The authorship needs to be correct. That last part landed the way I intended it to. Federal review meant accountability at a level well above any individual principal's preferences. Dr. Ade. Oko nodded. She had the look of someone managing a situation they wished hadn't developed. We're going to be making some adjustments to the attribution in the official documentation. My name as lead developer, I said. Yes, she said. On all versions distributed to the board, the grant application, and the district website. That's the plan, she said. We went through the details. Claudette asked several careful questions about timeline and process. By the end, I had a written commitment confirmed by email before I left the building that the framework would be reissued with correct attribution within 10 business days. I walked out into the October air, Claudette beside me. The trees on Henderson Road had gone golden red. She said, you handled that well. I had 14 months of documentation, I said. Most people don't keep that, she said. I learned to, I said. The reissued framework went out to the district on a Friday. My name was on the cover, not in a footnote, not in a collaboration credit. Lead developer Iris Calloway. My phone buzzed for the rest of that afternoon. Colleagues, people I barely knew. A retired teacher who had been on the original pilot committee sending me a note that said, finally. The 5th grade teacher from the north side sent a simple message. There it is. Mr. Gallagher sends nothing. We passed each other in the hallway Monday morning, and he said good morning, in the same tone he used for everyone. I said good morning back. That was the whole conversation. That was enough. The board's follow-up meeting happened 2 weeks later. This time I was on the agenda. I presented the tier to walk through myself. Mr. Adeyemi asked his questions and I answered every one of them. Not defensively, not with any performance of triumph, just accurately, with the fluency of someone who had spent 14 months inside a thing and knew every room in it. Afterward, he approached me in the hallway. He said, that's a rigorous piece of work. Thank you, I said. It took a long time to get right. He nodded once, as if that was the only correct answer, and walked away. The grant came through in January for $20,000 for district-wide literacy intervention. The award letter listed the framework by name and cited its research alignment and implementation structure as primary factors in the scoring. The developer named in the federal documentation was me. I read the letter at my kitchen table on a Saturday morning with coffee. I actually tasted for once. My sister called. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. She said, "Are you okay?" "Yeah," I said. "I think I actually am." She was quiet for a second. "You know you're going to have to decide what comes next, whether you stay there or whether this opened the door." I had been thinking about that. The curriculum director had mentioned, carefully and without any official framing, that the district was building a new literacy coordinator position. She had mentioned it in a way that was not quite an offer but was clearly a direction. I hadn't decided anything yet. I was letting things settle. There's something I've thought about a lot since that October board meeting, about what it means to do work that no one sees. Not because it's invisible, but because someone has decided you shouldn't be the one receiving credit for it. It has a particular texture. That experience. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It happens in small revisions, reformatted documents, footnotes, and forwarded emails that don't include your name. And it works until it doesn't. Until someone asks a question that requires the actual answer. I didn't set out to prove anything to Mr. Gallagher. I didn't go into that October meeting wanting to watch him struggle. What I wanted was simple and should have been unremarkable, my name on my work. The thing I built, attributed to me, that's all. The version of me from 2 years ago might have accepted the footnote and stayed quiet. Told myself it was the professional thing to do. Told myself that making noise would cost more than it gained. I had been trained, the way a lot of women in institutions are trained, to make the work as visible as possible and to make myself as small as possible at the same time. To let the product speak without letting the creator take up space. I stopped believing in that trade. I kept my name. That turned out to be the whole strategy. In March, I got the literacy coordinator position. It was posted internally and I applied and I was selected, not by Mr. Gallagher, but by a panel that included Dr. Oku and 2 board members, one of whom was Mr. Adeyemi. In my new role, I work across the district, I train teachers, I consult on implementation, I sit in the meetings where decisions get made about how we teach children to read. My name is on the work. On my first day in the new office, there was a small plant on the desk that the curriculum director had left with a note. It said, "Glad you're here." The district needed someone who actually knew what was in the appendix. I put the note in my desk drawer. I didn't frame it. I didn't post it anywhere. Some things don't need an audience to be real. I sat down, opened my laptop, and started the next thing. I've thought a lot about what I could have done differently. And honestly, not much. Not because I handled everything perfectly. I didn't always. There were nights I sat at that kitchen table wondering if I'd made it worse by staying quiet for so long, by not walking into Mr. Gallagher's office the moment I saw that reformatted cover page with his name where mine should have been. Part of me still wrestles with that. But the longer I sit with it, the more I understand something that took me a long time to learn. Timing isn't weakness. Knowing when to speak and when to let the work speak for you, that's not passivity, that's precision. What happened to me wasn't unusual. I want to say that clearly, not to minimize it. But because I think a lot of people have lived some version of this and quietly decided it was the cost of doing business in their field. You build a thing. Someone else gets to hold it up in the light. You're supposed to be grateful for the chance to have contributed. I believed that for longer than I want to admit. I told myself it was professional. I told myself it was strategic. I think mostly I told myself that because I didn't yet have the documentation to back up anything else. That's the first thing I tell anyone in a similar position. Document everything, not as an act of paranoia, but as an act of self-respect. Your timestamps, your drafts, your emails where you're explaining your own ideas to people who nod and move on. Those aren't just records. They're the difference between a feeling and a fact. Mr. Gallagher could dismiss a feeling. He could not dismiss 14 months of traceable file history. The second thing is harder to articulate. It has to do with what I'd call the quiet discipline of not reacting. When I saw my name stripped from that cover, my first instinct was to send an email immediately, to the whole department, to the board, to anyone who would read it. I didn't. Not because I was being strategic in some calculated way, but because I understood, somewhere beneath the anger, that a reaction in that moment would have let him frame the story. He would have been the calm administrator, managing a difficult employee. I would have been the one who couldn't be professional under pressure. I had seen that happen to other women I respected. I wasn't willing to hand him that narrative, so I waited. I gathered. I made one small, deliberate change to the document and let him walk into that boardroom, carrying something he had never once opened. What I want people to take from this, what I think is the truest thing I can offer, is that integrity is not just a moral position. It's a practical one. The reason Mr. Adeyemi's question landed the way it did, the reason Dr. Okui sat across from me in that conference room and said yes to every correction I asked for, wasn't because I had fought loudest. It was because the evidence of what I had built was undeniable, and I had protected it carefully enough that it couldn't be revised away. Iris got her name back not by raising her voice, but by making sure the truth was too well documented to ignore. That's a kind of intelligence, and it's a kind of courage too. The kind that doesn't announce itself until it doesn't have to.